Hello everyone again. So it's a pleasure meeting everyone again, even if it's virtual. I almost feel that I'm back in Berlin in 2020. It was a wonderful time when I was in Berlin, and even in India in the virtual platform also, it just gives me the same feeling. And thank you everyone for the support. And I terribly feel chaotic because of all the technical issues that happened with me like 2 minutes ago, and I was so panicky all about it. Not taking too much into that. And I'm so excited to speak about my MAXQDA journey. And the most important thing I would like to start this presentation with is my PhD or this lockdown both would not have been well-traveled if MAXQDA wasn't there with me. So MAXQDA made this travel a wonderful journey of my PhD. As it is written, with MAXQDA, you travel it well. Now coming back to my project, it's only a month left for my defense. It almost feels I'm going to give a mock defense today. And I'm so excited to share with you all about the elephants in India. You all must be knowing that elephants were found in different parts of the world maybe 100,000 years ago. But unfortunately, elephants have crammed up into very limited spaces right now. And right now, they can only be found in Southeast Asia and also in Africa. So as I'm from India, I'll be talking only about the Asian elephants that is found in India. And here, there's a drastic difference between the elephants that is found in Africa and in Asia, and the way people look at or treat elephants in India and in Africa. So I did my research in India, and even in India, I did in a very small district, which is in the eastern part of India, which is in the coastal belt. It's called Odisha in Balasore in Odisha, of course. And there we get a lot of different kinds of elephants, basically not in terms of kinds, but in terms of their pattern, the way they live. Like we have huge stretches of forest in my hometown, and there are about 98 elephants residing very close to me. But there are about 200 elephants which keep coming from the neighboring state, and they happen to be causing a lot of disturbance or chaos during their visit. So what happens, earlier it was like there was a lot of forest cover. So when elephants traveled through forest, or they migrated, or they traveled for food and fodder or water, it was not much of a problem. But right now, small habitations have come up everywhere, and that has become the major problem. Now I'll share with you my screen so that you can follow me along with this story. Okay. So here I'm just showing like how contrasting and complex are the interactions between elephants and human beings. So earlier elephants used to fight wars for the kings. They used to carry loads for the Britishers, for the people, for the kings. And even till date, they carry a lot of tourists in a lot of national parks. And even in temples, we still have a lot of captive elephants. But those who are in the wild, they are no more confined to their forested lands. They are stepping out of the forest. Like you can see in this picture, that elephant is moving on the road. And on the other picture, you can see the elephant is in the cropland, and in the background, you can always see a lot of people, like the crowd, the huge crowd, which is engaging with the elephant, but the relationship is not as pleasurable as we all would have imagined. It is a terrible conflict. It is a terrible story of struggle. It's a terrible story of chaos and disturbance. But you will be surprised to know that even after 379 elephant deaths and 412 human deaths and 310 human injuries between the last 5 years, elephants have not been damaged, or elephants have not been harmed by people as much as you would have otherwise expected. And there are a lot of reasons for that. So that I'll come eventually as I progress. Basically, in Odisha, the researchers mostly studied elephant ecology, and they studied about the behavioral trends, and they studied the problem through the eyes of adult stakeholders, where there were a lot of other stakeholders like the media people, politicians, and male-female differences, or the children, or a lot of occupational differences were completely excluded from the story. And everybody was considered like a holistic whole, which was not the correct way to approach, is what I felt. And there was a urgent need to identify the major stakeholders and to bring about a convergence of all their ideas and issues. Okay, so here, although my PhD covered a lot of different things, lot of different stakeholders, but for you I have got only two. One is the community children and other is community adults. With them, I followed drawing method with children because that is best suited for children. And with adults, we did a focus group discussion so that everybody was open to discuss and say whatever they felt like. And of course, for data analysis, I used MAXQDA. For content analysis and for qualitative studies, I think that is the best platform that you could use. But I was also very surprised when I started using MAXQDA stats, and it actually gave an edge to all of the qualitative data that I had, and it helped me quantify all the qualitative interesting data that were emerging from my data set. Okay, now here you can see how I analyze children's perceptions. First of all, I asked them to draw what was their experience of elephants. So here on your left, you can see there are two paintings. These are two sample paintings, where on one picture you can see the students have written in Odia, which is a vernacular language here, and on the other picture it's of course written in English, but it's a little illegible. But you can see here elephants are interacting with the house, and you can see elephants are also moving around among people. Now there were many such paintings that we received through the course of time. But how I analyzed was more interesting. Now with the pictures, I thought what each student was depicting. I of course asked them in person, like what do you think this picture is telling, and what did you exactly try to depict? Am I exactly trying to relate to what that person, what that child have tried to depict on the pictures? And then I sketched it on the back, and when I came back, I imported that on MAXQDA. And on the document system, I went back to each and every picture and I draw square boxes and I thematically wrote whatever I thought about that piece of element. Like you can see one on the blue square, one on the green square, pink square. So for each, I color coded them so that I could understand that different color codes depicted different things. So if you have attended yesterday's visual tools session, or for that matter any basic MAXQDA introductory session, you would know what I'm talking about when I'm trying to code these paintings. Okay, now visualizing my data was far more interesting because there were several ways I could visualize my data. For example, there was something called cross tabs, and there was something called code matrix. And I could also import all of this into my MX Excel. Like I could import all of this into an Excel sheet as well. And I could also do a max map. So here on your left, what you see is a cross-tab data, which shows manifestations of conflict, as in like what were the depictions of conflict by different categories. As in here I have gender codified this, as in what the female said and what the male children said. So here, as you can see, there were 15 male students and there were 19 male and 15 female. And then you can see the percentages, like how much, what portion has been depicted. Like elephants destroy our crops or vegetation. Elephant eat away our crops. Elephant break houses. So all of these are depicted here. Similarly, if you look on the code matrix browser, there are boxes. You can also use same boxes for the same number, like for different frequencies, or you can ask that I want different size boxes for different frequencies. You want to have sum, you can have the sum. If you don't want the sum, you may not have the sum. Okay, now coming down to the Excel sheet. So here this is how it looks like when you import the retrieved segment into an Excel sheet. So here all the tiny segments of the drawing which I said to be conflict or something else, like whichever theme I wanted, I could directly export that into Excel sheet. And here all the females are written, then I would have males, and similarly I could individually see each of those little elements. Okay, now coming down to Max Maps. Max Maps was another interesting feature of MAXQDA where I could visualize in a more illustrative manner. And the lines that you see, the thickness of the lines basically depends on the frequency, like the frequency in which they opted for all that themes. And if you so this is very interesting, like where they say that elephants damage our crops, they break trees, they eat our banana plants, and they eat our sugarcane plants, they kill human beings, and these were very interesting to note. Okay, so findings from children's drawing was far more interesting, and I could also find out that male participants and female participants has very different ideas, because the male child or the male boy or whatever, the boy is open to go anywhere, but the female or the girl child is always kept in a safety segment. Like you always have to stay safe in the house. You don't go out when elephants are there. You might be trampled, or you might not be able to run. So their exposure to elephants or their whatever activity they saw with the elephants was far lesser than the males. As you can see in this also, no, the males seem to have talked about more number of things than the female. So there were a few more things that I found out. Like if you want to know more about it, you can of course read my blog or check out other pages whenever it comes. So this is what happened with children. Now coming down to the community, the adult community people. So here also I'm showing you the same things, how the manifestation of conflict worked. They talked about how they broke water points, they damaged water body, there was prolonged power cut because of elephants, and there was death of human beings, of course, and there was attack on the grain storage. So here basically in India what happens now, people basically store their grains inside the house, and the houses are basically kacha houses, like you can see on the right, there's a picture. So these are basically thatched houses with mud walled houses, so it's quite easy for elephants to break and reach the grain storages. Similarly, I have also categorized these in terms of different villages. So you can see Ajodhya, Gopalpur, Jadibali, and few more villages. So these are different ways you can represent your data, whether it is on code matrix or whether it is through crosstabs, anything you can do with your data, and you just need to play around with your data and what you intend to get out of it. Okay, now this is another way of visualizing your data where I checked how different villages have talked about conflict situations or issues with elephant situations, and where they have talked about and how many people have talked about. So these are basically line numbers where that person is talking and how many coded segments are there, and there are a lot of things which is happening on this page which can happen on interactive code matrix. So this is another way of visualizing your data. Now the most interesting part, which I had already talked before, like why are people so tolerant toward elephant issues? First is fear of elephants. Fear of elephants meaning that elephant is gigantic, right? So the shape of elephant itself or the might of elephants itself scares away people away from them. And there's a source of amusement. So where there are hundreds of elephants walking in a herd, then it makes a beautiful spectacle to look at. Probably you can go back and Google and then check out elephants in India and elephant migration in India, and you would find amazing videos, and you'll be thrilled to see those. And there are a lot of advantages of elephants. This was very surprising. Like being a scientist or an ecologist, people would want to tell about elephants and advantages of elephants, but community people told me about so many advantages of people that I for myself took it all by surprise, that everything lies with indigenous community, with the local community. The knowledge lies with them. And the most important thing was the cultural and religious beliefs. So here in India, we consider elephants as God. So that is the reason you can see a lot of garlanding on an elephant toy. And this is what people pray in India. And this is how elephants look in a beautiful, serene forest environment in India. That's all. Thank you so much.